MPs have a conference call with the Paymaster General, who is coordinating ministerial responses, and we are fielding queries through directly to ministers' departments and SPADs and PPSs. So there's an awful lot of information flowing around. I have put everything that I'm getting on my website, so there's quite a big resource now of information for all the packages that come out of Treasury to do with businesses, for employees, health advice, what happens with schools, what happens on health matters and everything like that, and also what's happening locally for people who need support, some of the community hubs and everything like that. I've been referring quite a few things to Andy. I'll hand over to Andy just to say a couple of things in a minute before we start answering the questions, because the local authority are administering some of the government's business support schemes and grants, which are about to come online. Andy will confirm that in a minute. Obviously, there has been an awful lot around the self-employed people recently. There's a couple of questions on that I'll come back to in a minute. I am aware, and there have been many representations made, that a group of self-employed workers who pay themselves perfectly legitimately, largely from dividends, that the dividend income is not included in their assessed income. And that obviously means that many people are going to end up getting a much smaller amount from the government than some of the employees they might have furloughed. That has been taken up, that is being looked at again by the Treasury. There are various solutions that have been suggested as to how you potentially get around that, particularly if people have paid themselves a set amount effectively every month. You could do an analysis from that. It is a hugely complex area fraught with all sorts of problems. There is the daily press conference from Downing Street this afternoon. I think the Chancellor is going to be addressing. There's going to be some more details today and tomorrow on some of the schemes that have come up and various adaptations that may be made to them. Secondly, on business interruption loans, there's been a fair deal of criticism of the banks not being fast enough and being urgent enough about getting money through, or asking unreasonably for securities that were not intended, or basically saying we can't, get you any money for a couple of months or whatever. I think that might be covered in the press conference today or tomorrow. There's been a lot of pressure on the banks to act with a much greater sense of urgency. So there's a whole lot of stuff about all the Corona job retention schemes on my website. I'm asking people to go there first, and if the stuff isn't there, or it's something that hasn't been covered, you need me to lobby on, then by all means, then please email me and I will take that up directly. But just be patient. We've had hundreds and hundreds of emails every day this week. We're dealing with everything from people stranded in Bali, Australia, Pakistan, India, Peru, to somebody who was very irate because Sky had just delayed the installation of his satellite dish, and could I get on to the chief executive and sort that out, and he got fairly short shrift, but all manner of queries were getting in between. But anyway, can I just hand over to Andy just to give an intro about what the council's role is in all this, and then we'll get going with the questions. Andy.
Sure, thanks, Tim. Hi, everybody. Yeah, to kind of give an idea about the council's role in it, and to follow on from Tim, you would have seen there's a number of support packages out there for businesses. You'll see rate relief support that has come out, which is being dealt with by our Revs and Benefits team. But my team at the council, for people that don't know, is the Place and Economy team, and we are dealing with the cash grants. Those cash grants are for the retail, hospitality and leisure businesses, up to £25,000 per property, and for those small businesses up to £10,000. What we have been doing since the Chancellor announced them is there's been around about 3 versions of guidance that have come out over the last couple of weeks. And we have had to, based on that guidance, as we're the distributing authority for both Adur and Worthing, we have had to build a system in the space of 5 days to cope with the demand that will be coming out. I'm pleased to say that system will be ready and live tomorrow. What that means is businesses who believe that they are eligible will be asked to go onto that system, upload their details, which is very straightforward. And if Tim wants me to, I can take you through the information that we need. We will verify those checks in the background based on our business rates data, and then we will process the grant. We hope it's going to be a simple process and quick process, and we're going to do our utmost to do that. But it is just a bit of a plea from us that we're going to have to be dealing with probably up to around 3,000 grants to get this money out the door as quickly as we can. But the system is ready, we are ready. There'll be a press release coming out tomorrow on that. And you'll be able to find that system on the Adur Worthing Councils COVID business support pages. So yeah, that's kind of gives you a bit of an update on that. We're ready for tomorrow. And yeah, try and get these grants out as quickly as we can.
Andy, thanks for that. We'll come back to Andy. Can dip in and out answering any of these questions as well. And then if people want more detail, just flag it up on the webinar chat, and Andy can come back and give a bit more detail later on about the process if that would be helpful. We had just a few questions in advance, and then we'll go to the chat bar. I've been dealing with a couple of cases about what qualifies as an essential provider and key workers, and this has come up from the likes of, say, ETI, who produce thermometers for use in the NHS and in hospitals, and also for the food industry, which is obviously deemed to be an essential service as well. I'm trying to get definitive definition that they do count as essential service, and there's one or two other companies have asked me the same. Frankly, as far as I'm concerned, and when I bounced off the minister, her reaction was, well, yes, they would be. If you are supplying the front line in the NHS, then I would have thought that would be covered by that. There is an issue then around what qualifies as a key worker. Key workers is particularly relevant for schools, for whether the school or nursery will continue to take your child. Obviously, that's going to be slightly academic for the next couple of weeks while the Easter holidays are on, but if we are still in this lockdown period beyond the Easter holidays, it will be relevant again. And I'm just trying to get a bit more clarity on that. In fact, what has happened with schools across the constituency, and I wrote to all the schools last week and I spoke to several of them, the demand for key worker places at schools was much less than was thought. It was anticipated it was going to be something like 20% of pupils would still go. One school thought they would have about 40% from the number of inquiries we've got. That number has been dwindling and dwindling, and people have got the message that they possibly can to stay at home anyway. And in fact, some schools have closed altogether. Worthing High closed because it was down to 0 pupils who needed to come to school. But I'll try and get clarity on that essential service and key workers. I had a query beforehand about company directors who are taking largely dividends. There's also a question on the chat from Steve Hollenby about limited companies with 2 directors or both employees. My understanding, but again, there is a section on my website about the self-employed status that directors can follow themselves. They can't continue doing profitable work, but they can continue doing maintenance business for your statutory requirements as directors. That doesn't count as work. So if you're maintaining your business but not actually creating work for your business, then you can include yourself in the furlough scheme. But there is a bit more information on my website on that. Then we've had 2 other queries. There's one about nurseries, and Anne, I need to reply to some emails because I'm trying to get some clarity from the Department for Education on this. There is, and this does apply to other childcare provision as well, particularly around foster care and independent children's services, where you can furlough employees, but if they are being funded by public grants, i.e. they get the childcare scheme monies, then you can't. And there's a bit of an anomaly there about two types. Now, whether you can furlough half your workforce and keep on half or a portion of your workforce who are looking after those key workers who are being funded publicly. I'd have thought that is the answer to that, but I will try and get some more clarity on that one, and I'll go back to Anne, who has raised that particularly. Then we have somebody whose daughter is a zookeeper. We're dealing with all sorts, and whether she is described as an essential worker, that depends. I think if you're directly looking after the animals, an exception for people, legitimate businesses, is that if you can go out to look after pets and things like that. So I don't see why you shouldn't be able to go out and work and be regarded as a key worker if you're directly looking after the care of animals in a zoo. If you're running the ticket office or working in a gift shop, where of course you've got no visitors now, then that probably wouldn't apply. But there are, I'm afraid, lots of little sort of niche jobs like this. If somebody wants to come back to me specifically and email me, say what job they are doing, and if it is in the care of animals, then I can take it up. And then finally, on the questions, there's this business about garden centres and the ensuing tragedy of £200 million worth of plants and shrubs that are about to go to waste because garden centres aren't open. Again, this is a grey area because under the terms of businesses that can remain open, it includes hardware shops and those involved in agricultural supplies. And I was referred to that by the department to cover garden centres. And of course, someone like B&Q, they're providing largely hardware supplies, and they've got a garden bit latched onto them. They have chosen, B&Q and Focus, I saw, or Homebase, I think in particular, to remain closed, but they're dealing with internet orders. We've been lobbying ministers quite a bit. Can we have some exception where plants can be distributed, or they can do a delivery service, or they can be open on a limited basis, because otherwise this is their prime time of year, and there's a lot of small nurseries in particular whose income is going to take a huge hit. So that is being looked at. Right, looking at the Zoom webinar chat questions. So we've got lots of people saying they can hear us, but we can't hear them, or whatever. I think that's right. I've dealt with Steve Hollaby's question. Simon is asking us all, and you might want to come on this, Andy, as well. I'm very concerned about social distancing guidelines and other information issued by the government to construction, which flies in the face of the 2-metre distancing rule. This is quite contentious, and construction has been singled out as an area which the government specifically allowed to continue, but it's really difficult to institute the 2-metre rule. And I had a report yesterday from an employee who said that they'd only just stopped using the fingerprint admission system, so everybody's actually touching the same screen to get in and out, and they had a canteen operating where everybody was sort of cramped in ridiculous conditions. Now that should not be happening, and there can be inspections from the local authority that if they are not following even the basic social distancing where they can, then they're going to have to change that or be forced to close. But it's up to the individual construction employers to make sure that their employees are safe and they are observing the social distancing provisions just as much as they possibly can. I mean, strictly, the social distancing are that you shouldn't be within 2 meters of somebody for up to 15 minutes. But, you know, most people are interpreting that as you don't want to go within 2 meters of anybody for any length of time at all. So they should be issuing masks and everything else where they possibly can. But I think there may be some further guidance on construction sites, because that's coming up an awful lot in our morning calls to the minister. So Simon's also asking about face masks and goggles provide adequate protection, and it is construction essential working. Well, it's not essential working, but it's permitted working under, you can't do it at home, obviously. So therefore, as the law stands at the moment, construction sites are remaining open. A number of people are saying, well, unless they're on urgent things like hospitals or things that are actually helping the coronavirus, then they should be all put on hold. That's not the position at the moment, but I entirely recognise the hazards that are involved there. Andy, do you want to add anything from a council point of view on that?
No, I think you just covered it. I think probably the only thing that I'm aware of on our sites is construction has stopped on our sites. So those that we're building out and people will be aware of, construction has stopped on our sites. That's probably the only thing I can probably add on that one.
Okay, Robin said, I've acknowledged some of the issues with the business interruption loans, and yes, I've had this directly from a number of people, and it's a common complaint that's coming up on the Treasury chat amongst MPs. And as I say, there's John Glenn, who is the City Minister, has been dealing directly with the banks and with UK Finance to get the banks to be much more proactive and much more immediate in this. There seemed to be a particular problem with Lloyds. I was getting a lot of complaints about Lloyds banks were refusing loans, or it was going to take far too long. There are things happening to speed that whole process up, particularly for those companies who have got immediate liabilities to their workforce, and they're having to sort of put money up front. So I hope we're going to see some more action on that one. It shouldn't be a bureaucratic process. And given that 80% of these business loans are underwritten by the government, the risk to the banks is very small. And again, within the Treasury brief I've put on my website, that if there are viable businesses that are being affected by coronavirus, then they should be extended loan facilities under this scheme, and the onus is on the bank to give a good reason why it shouldn't extend loan facilities under that scheme rather than the other way around. That's the assumption. And we've had a follow-up from the zookeeper. The zookeeper does look directly after animals. Could you please email me directly on that one, and I'll take the cause of zookeepers up as a special cause on that one. That's one of these niche areas. So if you just email me at tim.loughton.mp@parliament.uk, I will see what I can find out more on that one. And Jackie has said that local nurseries is doing deliveries. So nurseries are able to do some of these deliveries, but if people order online, and perhaps if we put that around a bit to support their local nurseries, then people will order online and pick up those plants. Tina, and I don't know, Andy, if you've had any of these. So what's happening to support the larger businesses who fall outside of all the grants, but who need support with their high overheads even after furloughing? Andy, are you getting people speaking to you who fall outside of the scheme?
Not in huge amounts, I have to be honest. However, they are starting probably to trickle through. So those kind of medium businesses that kind of just fall out. We're not getting many inquiries from our larger businesses, although we're happy to help and direct people to obviously the rest of the support that the government have released. But no, the majority of inquiries that we are getting through, and we've had around 700 already, are those who feel eligible for the grants. But yeah, a few starting to trickle through, but not a high volume.
I've had a couple of businesses who are caught between a rock and a hard place. They are too big, employ, for example, one firm 350 people, and their turnover is too high to qualify for the small businesses. But they're not one of the big businesses who can go to the Bank of England scheme. And there are quite a number who are caught there. So again, we've made representations to Treasury ministers about flexibility for dealing with those who usually just need to have a tiding over bank loan and should normally qualify in normal circumstances. So as I say, there'll be further announcements. I'm not sure if it's going to be this afternoon or tomorrow from the Chancellor, particularly dealing with the loan scheme. Right, Paul Hopwood to all panelists. I've been suggesting that clients ask their employees to write to their landlords or building societies to ask for a moratorium on payments. It shouldn't be for the government or employers to do all the heavy lifting. How accommodating are building societies likely to be? I've had very few complaints about people failing to get mortgage holiday support from building societies. So I don't think that is a problem at the moment, and absolutely employees should be able to take it up directly. And then if they do have a problem, then by all means come back and query it, and we can go directly to the building society and say, hold on, why have you not given that? Because it's a blanket mortgage holiday that is being offered. Tracy, what's going to happen to sole traders who only started business this past year? Is universal credit their only option? As the scheme stands at the moment, yes, because they again had to create a reference point of average earnings over the last 3 years. Obviously, I've had a few cases of people who've only just set up their own business. Again, there have been representations on that. Whether we're going to get something further on it, I don't know, but it's on the outstanding questions list. And again, I'll add that to the website if we get further information on that. I mean, there are various people who fall between two stools as well. There's another group of people who are between jobs. So we've had people who left there with the 28th of February qualifying date, left their former employment and are yet to take up their new job, and then it turns out the new job no longer can take them on. There are some things that have been offered. For example, if they were minded to, and many businesses may not be minded to if they've lost an employee, that the former employer could take that person back on and furlough them for the interim if they were minded to do that. So, and that wouldn't cost them anything. It will be covered by the government scheme. But if not, again, we're seeing what might be done for those people who are in between jobs there. Andy, butt in if there's anything you can add on any of these. I've got from Worthing and to Tracy Davey and all panelists. From John Rush, what's the plan for local UK government to support the local high street retailers, bars and restaurants opening as and when the restrictions are lifted? Okay, well, obviously they are qualifying for quite a lot of support under the hospitality sector. There were a few anomalies there, and so bingo halls, for example, were included last week. Under business rate relief as well, estate agents were included. I'm aware, and I've taken up a case for lawyers who are not included at the moment, although it's slightly more of a grey area because most of that business can happen remotely from home anyway. But then there are also some businesses who are not strictly classified as in the hospitality industry, but entirely rely on the hospitality industry. For example, catteries and kennels, I'm trying to get clarity on that one. Their business has fallen off the wall because they fallen off the cliff because obviously people are not going on holiday and being in the leisure business, and they've lost all their customers, but they don't count for the same terms as the hospitality industry. I'm trying to get catteries and kennels extended. And then we've also got several pie makers, including members of the chamber that I've taken up. When you're supplying pies to football clubs for football matches and no football matches taken place, again, you're just as much a victim as the rest of the hospitality industry. And we're trying to get a wider definition there so that they could be included too. Now, when this whole thing is over, there have been some representations from the British pub industry because obviously they're in a quite precarious position. They've been lobbying for greater help, certainly on business rates for in normal circumstances. And the last budget did actually take a lot of pubs, certainly the smaller and medium size, out of business rates altogether. Now, whether we'll need to go further when we're out of all this to get those businesses back on their feet or not, that will be looked at. Just to put people in the picture, Parliament is due to go back on the 21st of April. Quite how we will go back has been decided, whether we're all going to be debating and voting remotely, which will be a complete and utter nightmare, or whether a representative sample of MPs goes back. That hasn't been decided yet. But one of the things we do have to go back for, other than to scrutinise all the emergency powers that the government is acting under at the moment, and quite rightly need to be scrutinised, we also have to pass the finance bill. So the budget, which produces the finance bill, has to go through Parliament within a certain period of time. So that has to be passed through its parliamentary stages. So there will be opportunities to revisit some of the measures in the budget if there need to be adjustments to help businesses like pubs and others as well. I think in any case we will have to see an emergency budget after things get back to normal, and the Chancellor was planning to have a second budget in the autumn in any case to coincide with the comprehensive spending review. And that might just all be brought forward depending on what measures still need to be taken when we're at the other side of the coronavirus emergency measures. But certainly it's a sector that will need some support, I agree. Matt Sutton. Do the government have any plans to address the financial issues of limited company directors? A lot of the current talk is on short-term measures. How do you see us exiting this lockdown episode? And if we do you expect it to repeat itself? I think you saw the comments by Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor, when he announced the self-employed measures about revisiting the whole issue of differential national insurance for self-employed people and their companies as well. So I think there will be changes in the future. And I think this will be something of a watershed moment. And the whole tax system was being looked at anyway, but this has obviously exacerbated the whole need for that. So yes, the financial issues of limited company directors, I'm sure, will come under some scrutiny when we are back to normal circumstances. What impact on local government funding for the high street is the current situation likely to have in the next 12 months? Well, again, as I say, because there was a problem with the high street before coronavirus cropped up, and a lot of businesses were taken out of business rates altogether, and that was probably the single biggest overhead challenge for many businesses. That had gone down very well. That needs still to be passed in the finance bill, which is one reason, as I say, that Parliament still needs to operate. But there will just have to be a huge reckoning when we're through this as to what businesses are now not looking viable and what can be done to help them. So the person who made the point about we're looking at short-term measures, there are going to be longer-term implications from all of this that will absolutely need to be addressed. But we just don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. And frankly, my hunch is we are not going to be returning to normal at the end of this 3-week period. Just to put it into perspective, the crunch time is the next 10 days. The surge peak date for hospital admissions is estimated to be around the 13th of April. At which stage we will then see, one, whether the hospitals can cope. And I did a conference call with the head of the hospital this morning, and Worthing Hospital is in a very robust state. They're not anywhere near full capacity at the moment. They've secured a supply of ventilators, and they've made a lot of really solid plans, as you would expect from someone like Worthing Hospital. That's such a well-run hospital. But we will know in the next 10 days whether this thing is tailing off or whether we're going to have a real problem with coping with it within the National Health Service. But I think the message to everybody is don't expect that everybody's going to come out and have complete freedom of movement and every business can open up again at the end of this 3-week period. I think it will be extended in some form, and I think it will be a phased sort of climb down from the measures that we're experiencing now, if it's to be a sustainable recovery from all of this. And of course, we've seen evidence in Japan, in Tokyo, where they appeared to do very well to start with, but where the spread of the virus has started to come back. So it's got to be absolutely convincing that we've got it back under control. Anything else on the high street? Do you want to mention, Andy, about businesses have approached you?
The only thing probably to say is that from a local government point of view, we're still kind of doing business as usual around in terms of planning around interventions that we're looking at. I know, looking at the question that came in from John, I know we've been talking for some time, and that work continues. Especially around Lancing, but all of our towns and villages. So that continues in the background. We're doing business as usual, which includes looking at how we, create activation when this situation has calmed down a little bit. We know and we hope that people will come out, phased, as Tim says, but people will start coming out a little bit more. And we want to try and create the environment as best we can, in our public realm, in our towns and in our villages. So again, we'll be working with partners over the next coming weeks to make sure that happens. Unfortunately, as you can appreciate, all the events, etc., have been cancelled over April, May. But we're continuing to monitor with those people to make sure that we can create activation in our town centres. That's going to be important. And we've got a role to play in the local government as well to do that. So yeah, from our point of view, we're still doing business as usual in terms of the background kind of planning about what's expected of us, really.
Okay, thanks, Andy. The question from Matt about furloughing someone for 3 weeks and you bring them back to the workplace, how long do they have to stay employed before you can furlough? You can re-furlough them straight away, is my understanding. Again, there's more details on the website. The furloughing grant, just to recap, covers 80% of regular salary up to £2,500 a month. It doesn't include bonuses and commissions. It does include national insurance and other pension contribution employer costs. You have to be furloughed for a minimum of 3 weeks. During that time, you cannot work for that same employer. It counts as a sort of leave of absence, so you can't go off and get another job. You can volunteer or train, provided that this does not involve the manufacture or creation of an item or part thereof that can yield revenue for the company. So you can't do profitable work for that company. But as I said, you can do some sort of maintenance, statutory maintenance business. And firms can require workers to undertake training from home, as long as it, again, is not creating profit for the company. And you can sign up to the NHS volunteering scheme during that period, go and work voluntarily for food banks and other things like that. And on that score, just for people who are interested, the volunteering effort is being coordinated through Adur Worthing Councils. Tina Favier, who many of you will know, is doing a fantastic job at the council. She is working with the sort of impromptu voluntary groups, coronavirus community groups that have sprung up, and then people can, and I would urge them to sign up. You go onto the Adur and Worthing Council website under coronavirus, you can sign up to be a volunteer, and there are lots of things that we need doing, such as helping deliver prescriptions for people, delivering food parcels, doing some shopping errands. There's a particular problem still with older people who are confined to barracks getting supermarket deliveries. They're freeing up a lot more spaces for those people for click and collect, and then so some volunteers can do the collect bit if they order online. And so me and various other my team have been helping out with that. So anybody who wants to do some volunteering, and there's lots to do, and including just telephoning people to keep an eye on older, more vulnerable people, helping with people's mental health and everything like that. There are lots of things for people to do if you want to use your time creatively when you're furloughed or whatever. There's no work going on.
And Tim, just to update on that very, very quickly, I'm kind of pleased to say I only launched a couple of days ago, as you know, and I think we've already had 300 volunteers that have come forward, which is fantastic. But it's kind of to reiterate the point, you know, if there is any furloughed staff out there, we really could do the help, you know, to get out to the community. So just to say that, you know, volunteers are coming in thick and fast, but we certainly need some.
Yeah. Okay. There's some awkward person called Tina Tilley who keeps posting on the chat here. What is the situation for companies in the popular company working spaces as they do not pay rates? I'm not sure I understand that question, Tilley, to Mrs. Tilley. Perhaps we can we take that one offline, Mrs. Tilley? You're asking the awkward questions rather than your members. Erica Marsh, after a month of searching, we've offered a job to a new R&D engineer in February. He needed to give a month's notice. We felt compassionate to take this engineer on as promised. We had to furlough him as soon as he started. Any chance that we can reclaim his furlough payment from the government? So that falls foul of the 28th of February, I'm guessing. Can you, Erica, can I ask, can perhaps you email me some more details on that one? Let's see if we can find some more information there. Again, it comes for those people who fall between two stools. You've obviously done the right thing, but you're going to lose out financially. Send me that as a sort of case example, and I'll see if I can get you any clarity on that one. Jackie Bly, presumably we'll follow other countries. Spain did 15 days, followed by a further 15 days shutdown. This extension was announced before the end of the first 15 days. Well, and what the government said is that we're having a 3-week shutdown. We are just over halfway through that now, because that started the beginning of the last week. So the government said it would make a decision near the end of that 3 weeks. So I don't think, as I say, the crucial time is the next 10 days, depending on how the infection numbers continue to go up and whether it flattens out or not. And there's this crucial, is it called an R number, of whether the infection rates come under 1. So if one person is infecting no more than one person, then effectively the infection is dying off because it's not spreading to more than one person. So I don't know. The government's not committed on when it's going to make a decision on that, but I would not expect anything until the back end of next week, because so much is going to happen in the next 10 days. Another from Tina Tilley. From Vicky, what about new starts that haven't been able to properly get started before this happened? The advice on this would depend what stage you are at. If you have no trading history, and depending what business you're in, I don't think you will qualify under any of the schemes, and you'll only be able to claim benefits at this stage. This is the problem. If you've not got a trading history of more than a year, then you won't qualify under the self-employed status as it stands. So I don't think there is anything for you. Again, if you want to give me more details, I can see if I can find out more, but I fear that there isn't anything you're going to qualify for other than within the benefit system.
No, I think just as on that one, I think financially, I think you're right, but I think getting further information would be useful. What I do know is we have a number of companies coming through kind of asking similar questions, and what I do know is those businesses are actually, you know, taking the time, as painful as it is, taking the time to actually kind of drill into business plans a lot more, look at cash flows and looking at their kind of propositions. And so doing this downtime, as it were, I know businesses, especially startup businesses, are getting their heads down and actually looking at, you know, their business models. So when we come out of the, you know, lockdown situation and we ease back into normality, whatever that is, you know, businesses are more prepared. And I know there's a lot of support out there around training and advice around business planning, but I think Tim's right. I think a little bit more information that we could look into the financials, but I know that's what other kind of smaller kind of startup companies are doing in this period of downtime.
And thanks, Andy. And going back to Erica's point, again, I don't think you will get the grant because your new person was not on the payroll, PAYE payroll at the 28th of February. So I don't know whether you've offered to pay him the full amount or take him on a reduced stage until he qualifies to be able to be furloughed by you. But again, I think you're falling between the criteria there, I'm afraid. It's this crucial date around the 28th of February, but you know the government had to come up with some date from when to start the scheme, and of course it's backdated to the 1st of March for those people who are able to be treated in that way legitimately. Okay, have we run out of questions, Tina? Do we want to take anybody to come in orally or raise anything else? Andy, you were just going to explain a little bit more about the process. Might be helpful now if we've got a lull of what people need to do to go through the application process.
Yeah, sure. And it's and it will be relatively straightforward. So just to highlight, the system will be up and running on the council's pages tomorrow. We'll be sending out a press release supporting that, to be aware. Thirdly, we'll be sending out a letter to all eligible businesses, as I say, around 2,500 to 3,000 businesses that will go out tomorrow to land on doorsteps next week. So hopefully all those on our database as of 11th of March, which again was the crucial date, should be receiving the information. So in terms of the information that we will require, and it's relatively straightforward, and we would hope that you would have this to hand, and we'll ask you on the system to actually outline what scheme you require the grant for, or what grant scheme you're going under. And it's a simple case of fields such as your address, business address, confirming that you are obviously the rate payer because it is based on the property rather than the business. So it's the rate payer for that property. Your business rates account number, property reference, VAT registration if you have one, and company registration number as at company's house if you have one. And then the details of the person completing the form, which we hope and should be the rate payer, and simple as name, phone number and email address. I couldn't stress enough how important that number and email address will be. So if there is a query on the account, then we will be in contact with you. They are mandatory fields, so you shouldn't be able to not complete that, but that address is critical. And then probably the most critical part in all of that, to make sure that the process is as seamless as possible, is your bank account information. And you'll notice that we're also asking for your bank name. That is important because that allows our back system in the background to catch the details as quickly as we can. The other thing that we're asking for, again, if you have it, is to upload your rates bill as a record. It just allows us to process quicker in the background. But apart from that, hopefully that's kind of straightforward. We have tested it today with around 10 businesses. We've tested the system with 10 businesses today, and they all seem to have gone through it easily, and it took them about 5 minutes to complete, if that. So it should be very, very quick from your point of view. And then, as I said before, in the background, we will do the verification, which is essentially matching the details you've provided with our rates database, and then we process that to payment. What I would say is, and as you probably would expect, we're going to be dealing with a high volume of inquiries, especially next week. We're anticipating, to kind of give you an idea, Middlesbrough Council, who did it earlier in this week, had 1,000 inquiries in the first 2 days. So it's a bit of a plea to kind of bear with us in terms of verification. We will get the grant to you. It's just, you know, the timescales that we can do it in. But the grant will come out as quickly as we can possibly process it in the background. But hopefully that kind of gives you a bit of an idea about the information that we'll be asking from you.
Andy, thanks for that. Can I just stress, I mean, the key thing is to get some degree of certainty. So to be able to have your application process and be told, yes, you qualify, is really important, even if the money is going to take a bit longer to come along, and that at least the banks, if they're putting pressure on you, shouldn't be. And the assurance that you will be getting that support is the important thing. The Treasury are working around the clock to try and speed all these things up. You will appreciate that the amount of queries they're getting, the amount of new claims that you saw the figures from DWP, 10 times the amount of claims that they would normally get for universal credit, and incredibly they are coping with it in these circumstances. And I think Worthing and Adur Councils have been doing a phenomenal job. I mean, the services, everything from the bin men going out to all the queries that Andy's been answering, then all the new great effort they're doing through the community hub teams or looking after vulnerable people are doing a phenomenal job of work. I'd also mention the number of firms have been coming to me wanting to help, and just one success story, and I'm not sure if they're members of the chamber, Parafix from Lancing Business Park, and Mike Punter, who run Parafix, was head of the Lancing Business Park for many years. They have just been commissioned by the NHS because of an introduction. They came to me. They are manufacturing 130,000 high-grade visor shields for NHS staff, starting this week at the rate of 20,000 a day. They came up with the offer. They can convert their processes. They secured a supply of the relevant plastic, and they're going straight into production, which is absolutely fantastic. And Worthing Hospital was desperately looking for some more masks, and now we're going to have a huge amount of them produced in Lancing locally. And there have been a few other people who've come forward like that where they've been taken on, which is a really fantastic effort that everybody is making. There's one more query I see, Vicky, about Italy. Been told that this week that they'll continue to be in lockdown till the end of May at least, so they assume this will be in at least June for us. Italy, actually, I saw yesterday, have slightly relaxed some of their lockdown because it was quite a strict lockdown, which is why everybody was standing on their balconies and playing accordions and singing to each other. Obviously, we are trying to avoid the extent of fatalities and infection that Italy did. The key thing to all of this, and I absolutely agree, it has not been handled as well as it could have done, and the confusion around it has not helped around the whole testing procedure. And I think that some of the independent testing labs could have been brought into this much earlier to ramp up capacity, and I'm not sure why they weren't. Worthing Hospital has been testing for the last couple of days its staff, so it's able to get a lot of its staff who are on sick. They've got a number, although it's a single figure percentage of their staff who aren't able to work because of suspected symptoms. So they are rapidly testing all of them. So if they are clear, they can get them back to the front line. What is going to be absolutely key to how soon we can get through to this is the antibody test, which has been developed by, I think it's Oxford University, which can detect whether you have had the virus, because many of us have had the virus without really having any symptoms and knowing about it. If they can now test to show that you have got it, so you've got the antibodies and therefore you are immune from it, then if it turns out that a lot of the population, and that test can be produced in millions quite easily, then you'll have a whole load of people who can get back to normal. And crucially, it will mean that health staff who've gotten immunity can be at the front line dealing at much more close quarters to people who've got the infection, because they can't catch it again themselves. Now, if it turns out that we've got that a much higher degree of immunity, then that lockdown can be relaxed much sooner. But as I go back to what I said earlier, I don't think we're going to be in any rush to get back to normality. It's going to be a question of how steep the step down is from where we are at the moment. So businesses should continue to plan that they won't be operating as normal beyond the initial 3-week period and for however long after that. I think we've run out of questions there, Tina, and we're coming up to 3 o'clock. Do you want to?
You are.
We unmute you now. You've been released from the mute button.
Thank you for that. It's painful to stay quiet for an hour for me, that is, anyway.
Dead right, yeah.
Thank you, both of you. I think, and thank you all the audience, because the questions are probably lots of them that we've been hearing, and it's nice to get some sort of clarity where there is some. Still lots of other ones. The one I was asking about was co-working space, where you've got people not paying rates and that sort of thing. But that all comes under the same provisions again, as you're saying. They hopefully those sort of things might get cleared up, and there might be some more clarity on those coming up. But hopefully that was worthwhile to all the people who are listening, and we really do appreciate your time, both of you. And Andy, it sounds like the system, let's hope, works as you're hoping, and I'm sure it will, and we'll all be there to support and get things done as quickly as we possibly can, so which is going to be the important thing. And it'd be great if the banks just get a bit more relaxed, because that's where people are going to struggle with that cash flow. So I think very interesting, and hopefully, if we do have to stay in this situation for a longer period, we can come back and ask you to come and update when the situation needs some more information going out to people. But we do appreciate your time, and thank you very much, and thank you to everybody else for coming along, and we hope to hear from everyone in the next few weeks. And let's just keep in touch in this virtual reality. Thank you all.
Thanks, Tina. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you
and
very much.
Bye-bye.